with red wines in particular, there's sometimes really dramatic differences in color and intensity of the color. And so doing side-by-side comparisons can be a really effective way to look at that. I have two very different red wines that I'll look at. The first is an Oregon Pinot Noir. This is St. Innocent Pinot Noir. This is Momtazi Vineyard. So this is a New World grape. And then I also have Zenato Amarone della Valpolicella Classico. So this is an Italian wine. It's also a blended wine, mostly made from Corvina, but it's not necessarily 100%. Different growing regions, totally different grapes, and we would expect a lot of difference in what the wines look and smell and taste like as a result. And so one of the quickest ways to do that is to show and tell. And it just takes a little. That's the thing about tasting for education and for learning is you don't have to pour a full glass. Full glasses are great for drinking. But when you're just looking to rapidly taste and kind of build your palate and do some reps, you just need a small amount. And now I'll pour a taste of the Amarone. So for a red wine, all the color comes from the skin. And the juice of a red grape, the juice of a Pinot Noir grape, it's clear. So the only way to make that wine red is to let that juice kind of macerate and come into contact with those broken skins. And that's how you get the color. But if you have a grape that has thicker and darker skins, you're gonna have a wine that has more intense and deep dark color. How old the wine is can also determine, and how the wine's aged can also determine the hue of the wine. And the simple fact of the matter is, when it comes to red wines, it's more than just red. Sometimes they're true red, sometimes they have some orangey colors, and we might call that garnet, and sometimes they're basically purple. And that can give you a little bit of a clue as to what the grape is, or the relative age of the wine, or even the growing environment. I have the same amount of wine in these two glasses, and when I tilt the glass over, this is a really important thing to do. Ideally over a white background is best, but let the wine spread out in the glass. If you have a full glass of wine, it's gonna be really hard to actually tell the intensity and the actual color because there's so much of it. But when you just have a couple of ounces in your glass and you let it spread out, you see that, wow, that Pinot Noir is very much a true red or a ruby color, and I can tell time through it. It is really translucent, and that makes sense because Pinot Noir has thin skins. And so it should be a relatively translucent wine. If you came across a Pinot Noir and it was like super intensely colored and opaque in the glass, I'm just saying that's a little atypical. And the whole idea is to taste wines with typicity to better understand and be able to identify them. Here, where I have my Amarone, it has a different color entirely. It's a different shade of red. It's much more garnet, and it's denser and more intensely pigmented at the core. I can tell that I'm wearing a watch, but I definitely can't tell what time it is. And then I can just swirl the wine around in my glass, and the glasses look different. Oftentimes in the world of wine, there's a term that gets thrown about, and almost, I'd say 95% of the time, it's thrown about incorrectly. And that's when people discuss the tiers or the legs of the wine. Sometimes when people talk about legs, they say, oh, that wine has good legs. What does that mean? When you're blind tasting wine, you're just observing and you're taking in clues, right? And all these clues are gonna help you deduce what the possible identity of that wine is. Nothing is ever guaranteed. There's always an exception to the rule. And when you're making a decision, it should be based on an accumulation of all these different clues. And when people talk about legs or tiers, it's sort of this sheeting action that you see on the sides of your glass. And with the red wine, sometimes those dribbles and drips and that sheeting actually has a color, it's tinted. And in this case, the sides of my glass are coated with this kind of garnet color of the wine. And it really clings to the glass and drips down really slowly. And what that tells me is that this wine possibly, and I haven't smelled it or tasted it, possibly has high alcohol, because that will indicate slow dribbling tears. It could have sugar, because wines with lots of sugar have slow dribbling tears. And in fact, this wine actually has a little bit of both, and I haven't even smelled or tasted it. have a bottle over here. This is a Viognier. This is from Yves Puyeron. So this is a French Viognier. Viognier is what we call an aromatic grape. Sometimes it doesn't get a lot of love. It maybe isn't the most trendy of all of the grapes out there, but what I love about Viognier is it's really distinctive. And when you're getting to know wines and when you're getting to kind of learn how to blind taste and become a little bit more knowledgeable, really distinctive benchmark wines are your new best friend. They provide something that you can kind of latch onto right away, and it can be really, really, really helpful. So I poured a little Viognier, and when I say aromatic, I mean that the aromas that come out of the glass are more powerful than some other wines. Some wines are just a little bit more neutral, or I sometimes like to say shy. And so I have this Viognier, and you can take a smell. It just smells like peaches and apricots and blossoms and honey, and it's just this really expressive, very fruity. It smells like it would taste sweet because it smells like sweet, ripe things. The aromas are just leaping out of the glass. How do I quantify that, right? So when we talk about, the intensity of how something smells or tastes, we might say it's, low intensity, medium intensity, or high. And so what I always say is, if you're holding the wine about chest high, and you can smell some winey deliciousness, that's a pronounced aroma. And I might not be able to smell everything or as in great detail with this wine, but just holding the glass here with a gentle swirl, I can smell those delicious, beautiful floral and fruit notes. If you have to raise it to about your chin before you can smell anything, that's kind of like a medium. And then if you have to stick your nose all the way into the glass, that's a wine that has a relatively light intensity of aroma. And so again, by just taking samples of different wines and comparing them to each other, you can really assess different colors, different aromas, and different intensity of aromas, and then obviously you can taste the wine.